This is a short story produced by StoryStream called The Zombie Chronicles, New Orleans. Created by Christopher A. Lee and narrated by James Cully. Thank you for listening to this story. If you could leave the name of the city you are listening from, it might randomly get picked for our Zombie Snapshot series. And if you enjoyed this short story, please like and subscribe to the channel. Chapter 1. The Stillness Before. The sky over New Orleans was a washed-out blue, filtered through thin clouds that drifted lazily above the French Quarter. It was the kind of early March morning that felt half asleep, the city not quite ready to wake, its breath thick with humidity and the scent of chicory coffee and river silt. Claire adjusted her sunglasses as she stepped out of Café du Monde, a small paper bag of hot beignets in one hand, a coffee in the other. Powdered sugar dusted the sleeves of her olive-green jacket. Behind her, the soft jazz of a street performer's saxophone echoed faintly from Jackson Square. "Here," she said, handing a warm beignet to her husband, Marcus, who stood by the railing overlooking the Mississippi River. Beside him sat Rook, their 12-year-old German Shepherd lab mix, tongue lolling happily in the heat. His tail thumped the concrete. Marcus took a bite and chuckled. "I swear these things are made from cocaine and voodoo." Claire smiled. "That's why they're city-certified addictive." They had the week off, an early spring escape from Baton Rouge, staying in a rented loft above a gallery on Royal Street. Just the two of them. No deadlines, no spreadsheets. Just music, good food, and no distractions. Except maybe Rook's occasional fascination with pigeons. Across the street, a TV inside Montreal's bistro flickered silently behind a smudged window. The news chyron read something like, "CDC investigates mysterious illness in southern Texas, quarantine underway." Claire squinted at it, but didn't mention it. They spent the afternoon wandering the Garden District, ducking into antique stores and vintage boutiques along Magazine Street. Claire found a weathered magnolia print she couldn't resist. Marcus browsed used jazz vinyls while Rook got doted on by every passerby. It wasn't until they stopped for lunch at Domelice's Po' Boy and Bar that something really odd happened. The woman at the counter, mid-50s, with a thick accent and a dozen tattoos, apologized for the delay. "Some damn fool bit my delivery guy this morning," she muttered. "Who bites a man these days? Like an animal." She handed them their roast beef and fried shrimp sandwiches, then wiped her hands furiously on a towel. Said he was foamin' at the mouth. Claire and Marcus exchanged a glance. "Foaming?" Marcus asked casually. "Yeah, like rabies or bath salts or something. Paramedics had to take him away." Marcus laughed it off, but Claire didn't. Her fingers tightened a little on the drink cup. Rook, lying under their table, growled once. Just a low, uncertain sound. That evening, Claire flipped through channels in the loft, while Marcus took Rook out for a walk around Royal and Dumaine. The news was wall-to-wall politics, weather, and then a clip from San Antonio, a cell phone video of a man staggering across a gas station lot, blood coating his shirt. He lunged at a bystander. The footage ended abruptly. The anchors were visibly shaken. Marcus returned just after dusk. "You hear all that racket?" he asked, locking the door. "Cops blocked off part of canal. Something about an attack on a streetcar. Whole thing shut down." Claire stared at him. "You're serious?" "Yeah." He scratched Rook behind the ears. "People were filming. It looked like chaos. Folks screaming. Some guy hitting the windshield. Bleeding everywhere." Claire turned the TV up. The footage now showed emergency tents outside Oxnard Medical Center, and the caption read, Officials deny viral outbreak rumors, call for calm. They ate dinner on the balcony in tense silence, the city's neon glow diffused in the mist rising from the river. A second line marched below, brass instruments blaring joy into the night. The kind of resilience only New Orleans knew how to display, celebrating in the face of everything. Claire stared down at the revelers. She felt like something was wrong. Office. And it wasn't just the news. It was in the air. The way Rook didn't finish his food. The way the city felt like it was watching her. Later that night, the phone buzzed. A text from Claire's sister. "Hey, something's going on in Texas. Don't freak out, but we're thinking of heading north for a bit." Claire frowned, then opened her browser. Top trending topic. People attacking others in broad daylight. Not drugs. Number 2. Number dead eyes. A new pandemic? She scrolled until the screen lit up with a video taken earlier that afternoon. A man with blood-streaked cheeks stood on the sidewalk outside a lakeside mall in Metairie. He was shirtless, his chest heaving like a piston. Then he lunged at the camera. Screams. Static. The feed ended. Claire stared at the screen until it went black. She didn't wake Marcus. She just locked the door, slid the bolt, then pulled Rook up into bed between them. Chapter 2. They wake to fire. Claire woke to the sound of sirens. Multiple, close and distant, wailing over one another like dueling banshees in the dawn haze. She sat up slowly, blinking against the amber light pouring in through the tall windows of the loft. Rook was already at the door, ears forward, low growl vibrating deep in his chest. Marcus stirred. "What time is it?" "Just after 6. Claire moved to the window, brushing aside the curtain. Smoke curled up from behind Canal Place, billowing in thick gray spirals above the skyline. The entire block near Canal and Magazine looked hazy. Down below, a streetcar sat abandoned on the tracks, its front windows cracked. Red paint streaked with something dark. Rook barked sharply, his hackles raised. Claire jumped. Across Royal Street, a man stumbled into view from the alley beside the Voodoo Museum. He was shirtless, barefoot, and smeared with blood. He staggered forward, arms twitching at odd angles. As Claire watched, he collapsed to his knees, then shot upright and sprinted straight into traffic, smacking face first into a parked SUV. She didn't even hear the impact over the growing crescendo of screams. By the time they grabbed their emergency bag and rushed Rook down the iron staircase to the street, everything was unraveling. A crowd had formed on Decatur Street, people yelling, running, some still recording on their phones. A woman in a Mardi Gras mask stumbled past them, soaked in blood and sobbing. "Go back inside!" she shrieked at no one. Someone nearby tackled a staggering man in a hospital gown. The man went limp, then twitched violently and sank his teeth into the Good Samaritan's throat. Claire gasped, hand flying to her mouth. Marcus grabbed her wrist and pulled her back. "We need to get out of the quarter, now." They cut through Jackson Square, zigzagging between panicked tourists, crying children, and frozen street performers unsure whether this was a stunt or real horror. By the time they reached Chartres Street, a city bus had jackknifed through the front of Muriel's restaurant, the front windows blown out. Two figures slammed repeatedly against the bus windshield from the inside, faces pale and eyeless. Marcus flagged down a NOPD cruiser, but it sped past, tires squealing, sirens blaring. A cop inside leaned out the window and yelled, "Get to the Superdome!" "Did he say the Superdome?" Claire shouted. "Yeah, Marcus was already pulling her along. They must be setting up a shelter. By the time they crossed Canal Street, the world had turned into a war zone. Helicopters chopped the smoky sky, searchlights scanning rooftops and roadways. Fires burned across downtown, one at a Shell station, another near the Sanger Theater, flames licking at historic balconies. The crowd surged toward Poydras Street, all moving in one direction. But it was gridlocked. Dozens of cars clogged intersections. Some had been abandoned. Some had blood on the windows. A couple had things inside, gnawing, pounding, screeching like dying animals. They kept moving, Rook staying close to Claire's leg, alert and focused. Then she heard it. A noise she would never forget. That wet, broken-mouthed moan. A wave of them stumbled around the corner from Baronne Street. At first, they looked like dazed, injured civilians. But they were wrong, off. Their movements were erratic, heads jerking, jaws loose and slick. They advanced without sound, eyes pale and clouded, arms dragging like puppets with snapped strings. "Run!" someone screamed. The crowd stampeded. Claire, Marcus, and Rook darted through a smashed storefront, funky monkey boutique, and into the aisles of chaos. Clothes racks toppled, mannequins shattered, and someone already lay dead near the dressing rooms, throat open. They pushed out the back and cut across Julia Street, heading toward the Superdome. The Mercedes-Benz Superdome towered like a silver fortress in the morning smoke. The area around it was barricaded with trash trucks, city buses, and construction equipment. Military Humvees were parked along the outer ring. Dozens of people already waited in a packed line under armed watch. An officer at the checkpoint waved them forward. Only healthy civilians and registered evacuees. No bites. No exceptions. Marcus raised their hands. "We're good. No bites." Claire gestured to Rook. "He's trained. Search and rescue." The guard hesitated. "We're not supposed to take dogs." Screams erupted behind them. A group came charging out of the parking structure, followed by a dozen staggering figures. The guards opened fire. Claire flinched. "Please!" The officer waved them through. "Go! Go!" Inside, the Superdome felt like a prison. Cold, fluorescent lights, metal cots, panic hanging in the air like sweat. They were ushered into a lower corridor and told to wait for screening. Claire clutched Rook's collar. "This place isn't safe." Marcus nodded. "It's already too late." From one of the upper ramps, they heard banging from the inside. 30 minutes later, just as a medic checked their names, the fire alarms blared. "Containment breach in East Corridor!" someone screamed. A siren wailed. People scattered like ants. Gunshots echoed from somewhere deep in the dome. Rook barked, snarling at the smell of something approaching. The outbreak had found them, even here. Chapter 3. Dead Streets, Live Sound. The screams inside the Superdome were muffled by the thunder of boots slamming across concrete. Alarms shrieked overhead, and red strobes flickered along the upper corridors like heartbeat warnings. Claire shoved through a knot of evacuees as Marcus held Rook tight by the collar. "This way!" Marcus shouted over the panic, nodding toward a stairwell marked "Emergency Exit Only." Gunfire cracked through the air behind them. Someone fell screaming. Another woman collapsed to her knees, clawing at her bitten arm. The crowd ignored her. They pushed through the stairwell door just as something slammed into it from the other side. Not footsteps, not fists. Something wet. Claire didn't look back. The stairs opened onto Poydras Street, now a battlefield. The entire front facade of the Superdome glowed orange from the fires devouring the nearby parking deck. Smoke hung in oily sheets across the asphalt. A burning Humvee blocked part of the road. Its occupants were long gone, or dead. Sirens howled in the distance, but no organized response was coming. Not anymore. Rook barked once and began pulling west. They followed, skirting along the sides of smashed cars, the smell of melting plastic thick in their noses. Bodies littered the sidewalk, some clearly torn apart, others twitching with half-life. One raised its head. Claire didn't hesitate. She swung the crowbar they'd grabbed from the dome's maintenance room. The zombie's skull cracked like porcelain. "Let's keep moving," she whispered, more to herself than Marcus. By the time they reached St. Charles Avenue, they were winded, filthy, and lost. The streetcars sat abandoned, their doors open, their interiors eerily quiet. What few survivors they saw either ran the opposite direction or hid behind barricaded businesses. No one made eye contact. "Where the hell do we go?" Claire asked. "There," Marcus said, pointing across the street. A massive mural of musical notes adorned a building's side wall. The Howlin' Wolf, one of the city's most iconic venues. "Doors look reinforced," he added. "Could be shelter." Claire nodded. "Let's check it out." The alley beside the club was narrow and rank. Garbage cans lay overturned. Somewhere in the distance, something snarled. At the rear door, Marcus banged the frame with the butt of the crowbar. Silence. Then, "Say another word and I'll put a hole through the damn door." Marcus raised his hands. "We're not infected, just looking for safety." A pause. Then a mechanical click as a lock turned. The door opened a crack, revealing a broad-shouldered man with a shaved head, tattoos creeping up his neck. "You got bit. You don't come in." "We're clean," Claire said quickly, motioning to Rook. "Even the dog." The man looked them over, then opened the door wider. Inside. Quick. The interior of the Howlin' Wolf had been stripped down. The stage was barricaded with flipped tables and stacked chairs. Speakers had been pushed aside to create sleeping spots. A few people huddled in the dark, 5 in total, including the man who let them in. "Name's Big Mike," he said. "Used to run security here. Figured the place was tough enough to hold out a bit." One of the others stepped forward, a petite woman in scrubs and sneakers. "I'm Sierra, EMT. I was at the Dome before it all went to shit." "Charlie," said a tall teenager with a baseball bat wrapped in duct tape. "I just, ran here. Didn't know where else to go." 2 others waved from a corner, a man and woman, mid-30s. "Tobias and Renee," the man said. "Came from Trem. Our car's toast." Marcus introduced himself and Claire, then gestured to the dog. "And this is Rook." "Search and rescue?" Sierra asked. "Not officially," Claire said, "but he knows when to growl." The next few hours passed in slow motion. They barred the main entrance, took shifts on lookout, ate from vending machines and warmed water with candles. Outside, the moans grew louder, then faded, then returned again. It was a pattern none of them liked. Sierra patched up Tobias's hand. Rook paced like a soldier. Later, Claire sat with Renee near the back entrance. "You think this city's gone?" the woman asked quietly. Claire looked out at the smoke and ruins. "Not yet," she said. "But it's close." That night, Rook let out a low growl. Big Mike moved to the window. Shit. Across the street, 5 or 6 of them wandered the intersection, drawn by something. Maybe the candlelight, maybe the sound. But one of them, a little girl, maybe 7, sprinted. Full speed, arms pinwheeling, eyes rolled back. She slammed into the front door with such force that the wood cracked. Marcus grabbed a chair. "We're not safe here." "I know," Big Mike said grimly. "We're gonna have to move." By dawn, the Howlin' Wolf was surrounded. The music had stopped. Chapter 4. Blood on the stage. The banging at the front door had started just after dawn. It hadn't stopped since. Claire crouched behind the stage barricade with a flashlight in one hand and her crowbar in the other. Rook sat at her side, tense, ears twitching with every distant thud and groan outside. Marcus stood with Big Mike near the front doors, peering through the narrow slit in the boarded-up entrance. "They're not wandering anymore?" he whispered. "They're gathering?" Big Mike's jaw clenched. "It's the sound, the heat, maybe the blood. Hell, maybe it's the music this place used to pump out." The front door shuddered again under an unnatural weight. Claire turned to Sierra, who was kneeling by Tobias's wrapped hand. "Is he okay?" "He's stable," Sierra said, "but if we don't get out of here soon, he won't stay that way." Charlie paced near the stage, baseball bat in hand. His knuckles were white, his eyes wide. "They know we're in here." "They always know," said Renee from the back corner, where she sat with her head in her hands. Marcus stepped forward. "We can't stay here another night. What's the nearest route to get out of the quarter?" "North on South Peters," Big Mike said. "Cross by the Crescent City connection. Get to Algiers Point if we can. Might be quieter across the river." Claire frowned. "We'd have to go through the warehouse district first. That's where the bars and clubs are." "It's either that or let them break in here," Big Mike snapped. A pause. Then, CRACK. The front door buckled. A splinter of wood broke off and flew across the room. They moved fast. Claire and Marcus packed their limited supplies, bottled water, some protein bars, a map they'd found in the manager's office, and one pocket flashlight. Sierra helped Tobias limp to his feet, while Charlie took the lead with his bat. Rook stayed beside Claire like a silent shadow. "Back exit," Big Mike ordered. "We push through, move fast, no hesitation. Anything comes at you, you don't think, just drop it." He unwrapped a length of chain from around his wrist and gripped it like a whip. Claire shot a look at Marcus. "We're going to lose someone out there." He nodded grimly. "Just don't let it be you." The alley behind the Howlin' Wolf was quiet for 3 whole seconds. Then came the echo. Wet feet slapping pavement, nails scraping brick, moans rising into screams. "Go!" Big Mike bellowed. They broke into a run, pushing through garbage, leaping over a toppled recycling bin. Claire held the crowbar high. Ahead, Charlie screamed as one of the infected lunged from behind a dumpster. Without thinking, Claire slammed the crowbar through its skull. It dropped like dead meat. The group burst onto St. Joseph Street, where the early morning haze shimmered with heat and smoke. Sirens still echoed in the distance, though faint and meaningless now. Sierra pointed. "There! A van!" A white catering van was idling at the corner, driver's side door open, hazard lights blinking. No driver in sight. They piled in. Claire and Rook jumped in the back. Marcus took the wheel. Tobias and Renee followed, Sierra and Charlie slamming the rear doors shut. Big Mike held the alley for one last heartbeat, then dove in, yanking the doors closed behind him. Marcus punched the gas. The van groaned and lurched forward. They barreled through the warehouse district, dodging stalled vehicles and debris. At Julia Street, a body slammed into their windshield, cracking the glass but bouncing off. Claire screamed. Rook barked and snapped, pacing the back cabin. "We're not going to make it to the bridge like this," Marcus shouted. "It's jammed." They skidded to a stop near Tipitina's Uptown, the sign still lit, flickering like a beacon in the gloom. The street outside was eerily quiet. Big Mike jumped out first. "Looks clear. Let's hole up and regroup." Inside, the music venue felt haunted. Posters of long-dead jazz legends lined the walls. The stage was set, Mike still upright like someone had just left mid-show. The power was still on. Barely. A low hum buzzed through the walls. Emergency lights blinked red near the bar. They locked the doors. Moved quietly. Claire turned to Sierra. "How long can we stay here?" "Half a day. Maybe. The soundproofing will help. But they'll find us eventually." As if on cue, Charlie leaned against the wall and groaned. Everyone turned. "What's wrong?" Renee asked. Charlie didn't answer. His bat slipped from his fingers. Claire's blood turned to ice. "Charlie." He looked up, glassy-eyed. A bite. Hidden. The arm. Wrapped under his hoodie. Bloody now. Sierra screamed. "He's turning!" Marcus grabbed Claire and pulled her back. "Get away from him!" Charlie lunged. Big Mike tackled him mid-air, the two of them crashing into the stage barricade. Rook barked furiously. The others scrambled to get out of the way. Big Mike raised his chain and brought it down hard. Once, twice, 3 times, until Charlie stopped moving. The silence afterward was unbearable. They burned Charlie's body in a barrel out back. Nobody spoke. The air smelled like rot and regret. Claire stood with her hand on Rook's head. "This isn't going to stop," she said softly. "We'll lose more of us." Marcus stepped beside her. "Then we stay moving. And we never let our guard down again." From the stage, Sierra whispered, "We're not surviving this. We're just buying time." Outside, the moans began again. Chapter 5. Dead Men Behind the Gates. The streets between Tipitina's and the Garden District were deserted. Eerily so. Claire sat in the back of the catering van with Rook's head in her lap, his ears flicking at every bump and sound. Marcus drove slowly, weaving around wrecked cars, trash bins, and broken glass as the sun rose behind them. The others rode in silence. The scent of burned flesh still clung to their clothes after Charlie's body. "I always thought this neighborhood was beautiful," Renee whispered, staring out at the grand, vine-wrapped homes of Prytania Street. "Now it just feels haunted." "It always was," Big Mike said from the front passenger seat. "Just didn't look like it in daylight." They stopped outside a white-columned Victorian mansion, its balcony half-collapsed, its double doors cracked open like an invitation. The front gate was rusted and heavy, but intact. The surrounding iron fence would help, at least a little. Marcus nodded. "We hold here, we rest. Then we scout the others." The inside of the house was choked with dust and silence. Rook moved first. his nose low to the ground, sniffing room to room. Claire followed close behind, crowbar ready. The wallpaper was peeled, the chandeliers broken. A shattered family portrait lay across the marble floor of the foyer. Upstairs, a child's room still held stuffed animals lined neatly on a dusty shelf. It hadn't been looted. It had been abandoned. They barricaded the doors with dressers and chairs, nailed planks across the broken kitchen windows. In the backyard, Big Mike and Tobias found a rusted garden shed and rolled out its contents. A rake, 2 shovels, and a wood-handled hatchet. Not ideal, but better than nothing. That night, they lit no candles. They sat in the living room beneath boarded windows, speaking in hushed tones. Rook paced the perimeter like clockwork. Sierra cleaned wounds. Renee didn't speak. Tobias sat at her side, hand on her shoulder. "We can stay here for a while," Marcus said, "as long as we're smart. We've got fences, elevation, cover." Big Mike grunted, and not a lick of food. Claire looked up. "We scavenge the neighborhood, daylight only, pairs." "I'll go," Sierra said. "Tomorrow." "You're not going alone," Marcus replied. "I'll go with her," Claire offered. "Rook, too." Big Mike stared out through the cracks in the boarded window. "We'll need a watch rotation. We're not the only ones walking these streets." The next morning, fog rolled in thick as molasses. The air was wet, heavy, and silent. Claire and Sierra moved cautiously along First Street, Rook leading. They passed ornate porches with swings still swaying in the breeze. One house had a bloody handprint on the glass. Another had a corpse half submerged in a koi pond. Inside a yellow 3-story, they found canned peaches, 2 bottles of water, and a Glock 19 inside a nightstand drawer. Claire took it and checked the clip. Half full. "Better than a crowbar," she muttered. They also found something else. A journal left open on the kitchen table. The last page read, "They're getting smarter. Staying quiet outside at night." One spoke. It wasn't a word, but it wasn't a moan either. Claire closed the book and tucked it in her bag. Back at the mansion, Sierra passed out rations. Marcus cleaned the gun, while Big Mike reinforced the front gate with twisted bed frames and garden fencing. Later, Tobias rigged a tripwire alarm using old Christmas bells. "Just in case," he said. That night, Claire sat with Rook on the balcony overlooking Camp Street. The sky was black velvet, moonless, the kind of dark that swallowed whole. She heard them before she saw them. Figures, 10, maybe more, moving through the street. Shamblers. They didn't groan. They breathed. Shallow. Wet. One of them stopped, lifted its head. Its mouth twitched, jaw clicking like teeth grinding on bone. It turned toward the mansion and waited. Not moving. Not moaning. Just watching. Claire backed inside and closed the balcony door, her heart pounding. "They're not all the same anymore," she whispered to herself. Downstairs, Sierra finally broke her silence. "How long before someone inside starts to lose it?" Marcus looked up from the journal Claire had found. "Maybe sooner than we think." The next day, Renee was gone. No note. No noise. Just her backpack missing, the front gate slightly ajar. Tobias stood at the front door, fists clenched. "We shouldn't have stayed here," he muttered. "This place feels cursed." Claire looked at the iron gate, a smear of blood on the latch. She didn't tell the others what she saw beyond the fence the night before. She didn't tell them about the thing that watched. She just picked up her crowbar, and Rook followed silently behind her. Chapter 6. No Way Back. They left just after dawn. The streets shimmered with morning dew and lingering fog, turning the grand homes of the Garden District into silent mausoleums. Claire adjusted her backpack and checked the Glock at her hip. Marcus carried the crowbar now, and Sierra had pocketed a serrated kitchen knife they'd sharpened the night before. Big Mike led the group, his chain coiled around one forearm, the hatchet tucked into his belt. Tobias came too, quieter than usual since Renee's disappearance. Rook padded ahead like a scout, nose down, ears perked. "I don't like how quiet it is," Claire whispered as they passed a rusted iron gate on Coliseum Street. "It's always quiet before something awful," Big Mike muttered. The house they targeted was a brick behemoth with vines choking its pillars. They climbed the fence and slipped through the side entrance. Inside it was dark, shades drawn, air musty, thick with mold and silence. They split into two teams. Claire, Marcus, and Sierra took the upstairs. Big Mike, Tobias, and Rook swept the lower level. Upstairs, Claire rifled through closets and drawers. Mostly abandoned clothing, faded perfume, cracked framed photos of smiling families who never made it back. "Found some meds," Sierra called from a bathroom cabinet. "Ibuprofen, antibiotics, even a few bandages?" Claire nodded. "Every bit helps." Marcus kicked open a locked door, revealing a nursery. The walls were covered in painted clouds and stuffed bears, but the crib in the center was empty. Blood stained the sheets. No one spoke. Downstairs, Big Mike checked the kitchen, rifling through shelves. Tobias opened the pantry and smiled. 3 cans of soup, a gallon of unopened distilled water, and a toolkit. "Finally," he said, "something good." Then Rook barked, sharp and fast. "Shit," Mike snapped. "Rook, quiet!" But the bark had already echoed. Then came the response. A thud upstairs. Then another. Then the groaning. Not one voice. A chorus. Claire froze as a sickly moan rose from behind a sealed door at the end of the upstairs hallway. Then the door slammed open. A man staggered out, skin gray, eyes milky, jaw unhinged, and right behind him, 3 more. One of them was in a shredded UPS uniform. The other 2 moved fast, fresh. "Move!" Claire shouted. They ran, slamming doors behind them, shoving dressers into place. Marcus fired 2 rounds down the hall. One of the sprinters dropped, twitching on the carpet. Claire grabbed Sierra and yanked her toward the stairs. "Get to the others." But downstairs wasn't any better. Tobias screamed. When Claire and Sierra burst into the kitchen, they found him on the floor. One leg bent the wrong way, 2 zombies tearing into his side. Blood smeared the tiles. Big Mike roared and launched forward, slamming his hatchet into the head of the first one. The second turned, Sierra stabbed it in the neck, and Mike finished it with a savage overhead swing. But Tobias was gone. His chest chewed open, eyes glassy. Sierra staggered back, hand over her mouth. Rook growled, circling the body. "We have to go," Marcus yelled. "More are coming!" And they were. At least a dozen flooding in through a broken side window, slipping over the countertop, howling with hunger. The group fled through the rear door, into a weed-choked backyard. Rook veered right, barking. Claire followed without thinking. Behind them, Sierra cried out. One of the zombies had latched onto her backpack, pulling her back. Big Mike turned, swinging hard. but too late. The thing sank its teeth into Sierra's neck. Blood sprayed. She gasped, clutching her throat, and fell. Marcus fired 2 quick shots, clean and final. Big Mike pulled Sierra's knife from her limp hand. "Move!" he barked, eyes blazing. They didn't speak the rest of the run back. Claire held Rook's collar. Her hands shook the entire way. Back at the mansion, Renee's room was still empty. Tobias's tripwire bells were still strung across the gate, but only 3 of them returned. That night, Claire sat beside the upstairs window and stared at the fog rolling down the street like smoke. She had blood on her jeans, Sierra's and Tobias's. "They were just trying to help," she whispered. Marcus sat beside her, silent. Big Mike sat alone downstairs. He hadn't said a word since they got back. And outside, across the street, the same zombie from 2 nights ago, face half torn, spine bent, was still standing. Watching. Waiting. Chapter 7. The silence between screams. It had been 3 days since the scavenging run that killed Tobias and Sierra. 3 days since blood stained the tile, and Claire heard the sound of someone she trusted dying just feet from her. The garden district was quieter now, but not empty. Never empty. The infected shuffled like a current through the surrounding streets, always there, always brushing just outside the wrought iron fence of the mansion, like wind-blown leaves. The moaning never stopped. It simply softened. Big Mike sat at the dining room table, the chain still wrapped around his arm. He hadn't spoken more than 10 words since they buried what was left of Tobias and Sierra in the backyard under an overgrown magnolia. Claire stood by the window on the 2nd floor, Rook at her side. She peered down Prytania Street, watching figures drift like shadows across the cracked pavement. A mailbox burned at the corner of Phillip Street, black smoke trailing into the sky. "We're not getting rescued, are we?" she said quietly. Marcus approached from behind. "Number we're not." That night, they finally turned on the old battery-powered radio. They gathered in the living room, heads close, bodies still. Big Mike, Marcus, Claire, and Rook. A shrill burst of static filled the room. Then, repeat, global infection event. No remaining safe zones in the lower 48. Do not attempt to travel to evacuation hubs. CDC quarantine efforts failed. Foreign governments have closed borders. If you can hear this, stay hidden. Survive. This message will repeat every hour. Big Mike stared at the floor. So that's it. Marcus turned the dial again, searching for something, anything else. Another broadcast broke through, distorted by distance. They don't sleep, don't starve. Some of them learn. Don't trust the quiet ones. If you hear them whisper, static. The next morning, Mike was gone. The gate was ajar, chain left behind. His pack was missing. So was the hatchet. He left no note. Marcus found one of the old shotgun microphones in a music case stashed under the stairs, likely a remnant from Tipitina's gear they'd brought in with supplies. He wired it to the solar panels they had salvaged from a house on Camp Street. For a brief moment, they picked up a signal from somewhere near Claiborne Avenue. Camp built by the river, east of Bywater. Survivors, solar-powered, armed. Head count, 11. The message looped once, then disappeared. Marcus and Claire stood in the hallway after, eyes locked. "If it's real," he said, "we need to go." Claire shook her head. Mike just left. We're not chasing ghosts. You think staying here is better? She didn't answer, just walked away. That night, Marcus caught Renee trying to open the locked basement door. "What are you doing?" he asked. She jumped, eyes wide, clutching a hammer. I thought I heard something," she said. "We boarded the basement days ago. You know it's sealed." "I thought I heard scratching," she repeated. "From inside." Marcus took the hammer. "There's no one down there." But when he pressed his ear to the door later that night, he did hear something. Something soft, wet, slow. Scratch, scratch, scratch. He didn't sleep. The next day, Claire came down to find Renee painting on the living room wall with her fingers. Red streaks, looped spirals, and a crude stick figure holding a dog. "Renee?" Claire whispered. "I keep seeing them at the gate," Renee murmured. "The one with the spine. The girl in the tutu. They're always out there. They haven't breached. Yet." Claire looked down. The red was blood. From Renee's hand. She hadn't noticed the cuts. That afternoon, they buried Renee. She walked out the front door without a word and didn't stop, even as Claire screamed after her. She stepped into the street on Chestnut Street, arms outstretched like she was walking into the sea. The infected were waiting, watching. They swarmed. Rook barked wildly, growling and snapping, but Claire held him back as Marcus dragged her inside. She didn't scream, not anymore. That night they sat in silence again. Claire, Marcus, Rook, only 3 left. The mansion creaked around them. Wind rustled the ivy. A piano chord played once from somewhere upstairs. No one had touched it. Marcus stared at the fireplace. "We can't stay." Claire nodded. "They're all dead," she whispered. "The world. It's gone." "Then we make a new one. Just us." Rook whined softly. Claire ran her fingers through his fur, her voice barely a whisper. Just us. Chapter 8. Ashes of Bywater. The mansion door creaked open one last time. Claire stepped onto Coliseum Street, Rook at her heel, the sun rising behind a veil of thick clouds. She didn't look back at the house. She wouldn't give it that power. Marcus adjusted the makeshift pack on his back and slung the Glock over his shoulder. "You sure about this?" "No," Claire said. "But I'm not staying behind to rot in silence." They moved northeast, hugging side streets and narrow alleys, avoiding main roads whenever they could. The city was decomposing around them. Nature was taking it back. Grass through pavement, vines over streetlights, water pooling in potholes where pumps no longer ran. They passed Magazine Street, its boutiques gutted, display mannequins lying twisted and armless in broken windows. One still wore a tattered Saints jersey. Another had a child-sized gas mask strapped to its face. By midday, they reached the intersection of Canal and Rampart. A collapsed city bus blocked most of the road. Blood-slicked steps led into what had once been a Walgreens. Now it was a hollow shell, its interior looted and blackened with soot. Claire stepped over a body missing its legs and pointed. "Cut through Trem, then down into Marigny. Less visibility, more side routes." They passed Esplanade Avenue, weaving around rusted bicycles and overgrown fences. At a long-abandoned music school, Rook froze, ears stiff, growling low. Inside, something screamed, a shrill, guttural shriek. Not human, not animal. They didn't stop to look. By dusk, the streets narrowed and the buildings changed. Lower rooftops, iron balconies, and mural-covered walls. They'd entered Bywater. Marcus pulled out the paper they'd scribbled the coordinates on. It should be just past Clouet Street near the riverbank. They turned the corner and stopped dead in their tracks. The survivor camp was gone. What remained was a twisted ruin of melted steel and scorched earth. Tarps were fused into fence posts. Makeshift watchtowers had collapsed inward. Bodies littered the open yard, blackened and shriveled, still smoldering in places. Some were charred to bone. Others were still trying to move. Zombies. Burning. One of them lifted its head. Half its skull roasted away, eye bubbling like a blister, and let out a moan that sounded like fire being exhaled. Rook whined and backed up. Claire stood frozen. The stench of cooked flesh and chemical accelerant filled her nostrils. They burned it all, Marcus whispered. Someone lit it up. Maybe the infected got in. Maybe they did it themselves. No survivors? Claire asked. He shook his head. Then they saw it. A single body tied to a utility pole just outside the fence. Bullet hole in the chest. A crude sign pinned to the shirt. One bit. All burn. Claire turned away and vomited. They retreated into a nearby house on Mazant Street, barricading the doors with shattered furniture. Inside was silent. A guitar case lay open in a corner. The strings of the instrument inside were melted from heat. Claire slumped against the wall, holding Rook close. There's nothing left. Marcus sat across from her, rubbing ash off his face. There has to be somewhere. There isn't. They didn't argue. There was nothing to argue about. Outside, the fire moaned again, one of the charred undead dragging itself across the street, still glowing. Claire stared at the wall and whispered, "Next time we see a broadcast like that, we don't follow it. We trust ourselves. No one else." Rook licked her hand. Marcus nodded. We survive? Just us. Chapter 9. The River Knows. The Mississippi rolled by like something ancient and uncaring. Claire crouched on the levee's edge near Crescent Park, peering through an old chain-link fence covered in vines. Below, the river glistened in the late afternoon light, a sickly sheen of algae and ash floating along the surface. Marcus stood a few feet back with Rook, both of them scanning the horizon. The silence here felt different than the rest of the city. Deeper, heavier. "This is suicide," he said finally. Claire didn't turn around. Staying is suicide. They'd been moving east since the burned camp at Bywater, ducking through back streets, scavenging what little was left in the hollowed-out neighborhoods. No people, no signs of order, just more ash, more teeth. But the river, it moved, which meant maybe they could too. It was Claire who spotted the flatboat first. Moored awkwardly beneath a rusting dock near Piety Street, it was half covered with a tarp crusted in bird droppings and dead leaves. From a distance, it looked like driftwood caught on rebar. Up close, it was something more. "There's no engine," Marcus said after they'd pulled the tarp off. "But the hull's intact." "It floats," Claire countered. Rook circled the boat and sniffed. then sat down and let out a low huff of air. That was good enough for her. They needed fuel, tools, maybe a rudder. That's when they saw the house. It was half buried in ivy on Chartres Street, surrounded by a yard full of scrap metal and broken wind chimes. A faded sign was bolted to the gate, Leland Hicks, Noper Parks, Unit 82, no trespassing, I mean it. Claire rolled her eyes. Someone's been alone too long. Inside the gate, they followed a gravel path to the porch. A wooden cross was hammered into the yard, blank. The house itself looked sealed tight, but lived in. Claire knocked. "Back away!" A voice barked from behind the door. She held up her hands. "We're not infected. We're looking for fuel. Maybe some boat tools." A long pause. Then the door cracked open. The man who stepped out looked like he'd once been carved from tree bark, tall, gnarled, sun-scorched. His eyes were pale blue, one milky from damage. A .357 Magnum rested on his hip. "Name's Leland," he said, "and I don't do freeloaders." "We've got canned goods," Marcus offered, "and water." Leland stared at Rook. "Dog don't like me." "He doesn't like anyone anymore," Claire replied. After another moment of silence, Leland grunted and gestured inside. The house smelled like cedar and bleach. Leland led them into a cluttered den lined with maps, old fishing gear, and camping tools. A solar lantern hummed in the corner. "You want boat parts? I've got 'em, out back. Used to work river patrol before everything fell apart." "You've been here alone?" Claire asked. Leland's face twitched. "Not always." He poured rainwater into a chipped mug and handed it to Marcus. "My wife and son. They didn't make it past week 2. They're upstairs, still in the attic." Claire's hand froze near her crowbar. "Still?" He nodded. "I couldn't do it. Couldn't put 'em down. Couldn't let 'em out either." Rook growled. The ceiling above them creaked. They made the trade. Leland gave them an old trolling motor, a gas can half full, and enough rope to moor the boat twice over. Claire left the cans of beans, peanut butter, and a sealed pack of antibiotic wipes on the table. "Appreciate it," Marcus said, strapping the motor over his shoulder. "You'll want to push out at night," Leland advised. "River's quietest then." Then came the sound. Thump, upstairs. Followed by dragging. Claire stepped back. Leland didn't flinch. "They've been getting louder." Another bang. Rook barked, ears forward, body rigid. The attic door upstairs slammed open. "Oh, God," Claire whispered. Footsteps, then snarling, then something charged the stairs. Leland moved faster than anyone his age should have. He slammed the front door shut behind Marcus and Claire as they stumbled onto the porch. From inside they heard guttural howls, wood splintering, and the single loud bang of the .357. Then another. Then silence. Claire stood frozen at the gate, her chest heaving. Rook whined and scratched at the dirt. "Let's go," Marcus said quietly. He made his choice. Claire nodded. "Let's not waste it." By midnight, they'd installed the motor. The flatboat hummed softly as it drifted into the black current, the dock slipping away behind them. They took turns manning the rope tiller. Rook stayed alert, his eyes never leaving the shoreline. Fog rolled in thick and fast, swallowing the lights of the city. Claire sat near the bow, legs crossed, arms around Rook's thick neck. "We keep going," she whispered. "North, until we find something." Marcus didn't answer, but the river did. Its dark voice whispered all around them, not words, but something deeper, like the earth itself grieving. Chapter 10. Let the Dog Lead. Fog clung to the river like rotting silk. Claire stared into it, face numb, hands frozen around the rope tiller as the flatboat drifted silently north along the Mississippi. She'd lost track of time. Could have been hours. Could have been days. The trees along the banks passed like twisted sentinels. Houses once full of light now sat hollow, their windows black as eye sockets. Marcus sat in the back corner of the boat, wrapped in a blanket, eyes distant. He hadn't spoken since they left Leland's dock. And Rook? Rook hadn't stopped watching Marcus. Not once. They passed the rusted bones of a ferry dock near Norco, the concrete half-submerged, scorch marks trailing up the walls like shadows frozen in mid-scream. Claire adjusted the tiller and turned the boat slightly west. The fog thickened. The water grew darker. Then came the voices. Soft at first. A whisper in the mist. Claire sat upright. "Did you hear that?" Marcus didn't respond. He just stared. Then the whispers rose. Not words, not moans, just sounds, like language trying to happen. Rhythms, breathing patterns, something mimicking human tone without understanding it. Claire scanned the trees. Dozens of shapes stood on the shoreline, still, watching. No groans, no movement, just presence. That night, they docked the boat under the remnants of an old drawbridge. Claire set up a makeshift tarp to keep the dew off their gear. Rook paced, ears twitching at every splash. Marcus hadn't moved. Claire finally sat beside him. "We're not safe," she said quietly. "Whatever this is, it's not normal. It's changing." Marcus didn't look at her. "I had a dream," he whispered. "Your voice, calling me from the water. You said you were cold." She stared at him, confused. "I never said that." "I know." A pause. Then, "Claire, I need to tell you something." She didn't want to hear it. She already knew. Rook had known for 2 days. She stood slowly. "When?" Marcus lifted the blanket. His arm was bare, the bandage peeled away. A single bite mark near his elbow. Swollen. Red. Already turning. 2 nights ago, before we left Leland's. I didn't know at first. I felt it later. I thought I could manage it. Claire's breath caught in her throat. "You lied to me," she said. "I didn't want to scare you. Not after. You lied." Rook growled. Not a warning, a judgment. Marcus looked down. "I'm sorry. I didn't want to die out here alone." Claire stepped back. "You already did," she said. He didn't fight. When she raised the pistol, his eyes didn't even close. She pulled the trigger. The sound echoed off the riverbanks like a war drum, fading into silence. Claire wrapped his body in the tarp, tied it tight with rope, and let the river take him. Rook watched the bundle drift away until it disappeared into the mist. Then he looked at her. Not with fear, not with pity, but with understanding. By morning, the fog had lifted. Claire stood at the bow of the boat, wind curling through her hair, The sky above cracked with streaks of sun and ash. The radio crackled. A voice. If you're still alive, keep going north. Avoid the silence. She stared at the radio. No, she whispered. Let the silence come. Rook sat beside her, head high, gaze forward. The river opened before them. Endless. The end.